Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Anaya, and welcome to the Women's Eye podcast. This is where you are going to meet fascinating women who are leaving their mark, making a difference, and changing the world. This episode is brought to you by Casco Financial Group in Phoenix, Arizona. Catherine Scrivano is the president of Casco Financial Group. She founded her business to help people create the financial strength that they need to achieve their dreams. My guest today is Lindsay McCall Long. She is a 16-year police veteran, her last 10 years with the Tempe, Arizona Police Department. She is a mom, a wife, and a motivational speaker. Lindsay recently retired from law enforcement. We're going to chat about that emotional decision and how she came to that, and how it stemmed from a traumatic event that set that decision in motion the night that she was shot in the line of duty. We'll talk about what it's been like for her, both as a Black woman and a police officer, to watch the recent events unfold in our country. Plus, we'll chat about her advocacy for breastfeeding working women, how she keeps her young children entertained during the pandemic, and how she intends to motivate women with her stories. So please, will you join me in welcoming Lindsay to the Women's Eye podcast? It is so great to see you.
It's great to see you too. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. We have so much to talk about. But
Sure.
First and foremost, I do want to find out how retirement is going. Are the kids keeping you super, super busy?
That's the thing. People keep asking me, so how's retirement going? And I'm like, I have a 6 and a 3-year-old, so it's busy. I get to spend more time with them. It's been a nice transition so far. I can volunteer at my son's school, which work always hindered me from doing that. And I get to spend time with them, not feeling like I have to rush. So that's been really nice.
I know what that feels like, and it makes all the difference in the world, not just for us, but for them as well. And I've been following you on Instagram for quite a few months now, and your kids, they are such characters. I just love all the posts that you put on there, and you've come up with some great ways to entertain them during this pandemic: costume movie nights, cooking, hiking. Is there anything you've discovered about yourself during this time, when you were on medical leave, now with retirement and the pandemic, that maybe you didn't know about yourself before all of this?
I have more patience than I thought. With little kids, it's a lot different. You have to speak their language. You have to remember that they don't think as quickly as you do, and they don't have the same life experience. Which I think is a good thing, because I think we have to slow down a little bit. And, all of us, how it is being a working mom, and, you're boom, 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 boom all over here. And when you're supposed to be engaged with whatever you're doing with your kids, you're thinking about the next thing. So when I was home for my 8 months after my critical incident, my daughter was about 23 months when I got shot. And so I realized how much I'd missed when I went back to work after I had my son. So I got to spend good quality time with her during those 8 months, because, when they're that small, things change so quickly from day to day. They're just different little people. So I was very fortunate and very blessed to be able to take that time with her. So it's just kind of doing what they want to do. And, it helps keep me moving, because sometimes you just want to be lazy. And with the summer here, it's real easy to be like, I don't want to get outside and do anything. But when you have 2 little people that are waking up at 6:30 in the morning, you got to get up and moving. So I'm very grateful for that. And them just kind of showing me you can have fun doing the littlest things. It does not have to be a big production. You can just go out in the backyard, find some rocks and paint them.
Yes.
And then come up with different things like that.
Well, those little things really do become big things, especially in a time like this. And I love the fact that you use your social media, Instagram in particular, to really engage people in, what life is like for a mom of 2 little ones, but also what it's been like for you in this transition from being a police officer to now being a civilian. And I wanted to ask you, because you did post that emotional final call on Instagram, and I cried watching you listen to it, and then the things that you had to say. So tell us a little bit about what that moment was like for you, signing off for the last time.
Well, for me, anytime I hear an officer's last call, whether it's for retirement or unfortunately due to a death in the line of duty, it's always tough. because your life is going to change, and the person you were for however long you were on the force, you're not going to be that same person anymore. You don't have that same title. And, so it was different because it was me, and I'd rehearsed it, everything that I was going to say. And then once that tone went out at the beginning, I could feel myself starting to crumble, because that was the last time I was going to key up on the radio, which, this has been 16 years of my life. I understand that, since the shooting in 2018, October 2018, I hadn't been in a uniform, but, I would still hear the radios chirping around me from the area that I was assigned to. So it was a part of my life. So it was like second nature to hear all those sounds. And now I don't hear those sounds anymore. It's taken some time to get used to it. It's been about 6 weeks since my retirement. And the thing I miss the most is helping people. That's always been a big part of me. And I think as I was saying the words for the last time, or people hearing my voice on the radio for the last time, I'm thinking of all the people that I come in contact with over the years. Some good experiences, some not so good experiences, but they're still mine. And that was coming to a bit of an abrupt stop, because I still had more time before I actually got to 20 years of retirement here in Arizona. So it's a little different, just kind of dealing with that, because other people get to plan their retirements where, I go to the doctor and my doctor says, yeah, your arm isn't where it needs to be for me to release you to full duty. Bit of a punch in the gut, took me a few months to process it. And then we were at retirement, and as things picked up, paperwork, talking to HR, risk management, workers' comp, I'm like, wow, like this just got real. Like this just got real.
Well, is it fair to say that you would not have retired were it not for that night?
If I probably would not have, to tell you the truth. I still see a therapist. So there is some, I would have some anxieties when thinking about going back to patrol. But, I figured over time those would work themselves out. I think for me, it was the physical part, because I am right-handed, and that's where the most of my damage was during the shooting. And I can't afford to be a half a second slow. I needed my arm and my body to perform the same way it did that day, or faster, because I don't want to put myself, another officer, or a citizen in the position that's not going to turn out well for them because I wasn't 100%. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. And, when I got knocked down that day I got shot, I got up because I thought about my family. Those are the only people I have to prove something to and have to take care of. So just having long conversations with my husband and my mom and my brother, and just kind of working it out. And I was like, you know what, this will be okay. This will be okay. I can't get too caught up in it, because I'm still here and I have a family to raise, and there are other things that I can move on to. I think that was one of my biggest hangups, is like, what am I going to do? This is all I've known for 16 years. But like I've said before in previous conversations with you, the No Group has really helped, and being in contact with you and some of the other women, you kind of get reminded that what you think is a humdrum skill, and you're like, that's not really a skill, or this is all I know how to do. They're actually really good characteristics and attributes when it comes to other industries.
Well, it's interesting because you wrote something on Instagram after that final call, or with that post, you said, isn't it interesting how we tend to not see ourselves the way other people see us? Mm-hmm. In that call, I remember thinking that I was picking up on you getting more emotional, listening to what other people were saying about you and how impactful you have been in years as a police officer.
Yeah, it's different. Like, when I originally made my post, I made it Facebook official about my retirement, and the comments started to come in. And then at my actual ceremony, people got to get up and speak. And then there was the portion that you saw where people were saying things on the radio. because I just think I'm just being everyday Lindsay. You know, I like helping. I like lending an ear. If something's wrong, like, how can I help you? But I don't always view myself in the way other people did. So something I thought was small, just like a text message, like, hey, you crossed my mind today, Catherine, how are you doing? I find out from other people, it was a big deal. And they were like, I was just having the worst day ever. I wasn't in a good place. And I got that text message and I was like, wow. Or, you know, just giving somebody a hug when you see them and, you know, things like that. So I always keep that in mind, and it's humbled me. I mean, it's been a very humbling experience. And actually everything that has happened since I made that announcement, it's kind of helped me find my way and find my path and what it is I do want to do. So I think that's been very helpful, because I feel like otherwise I kind of would have been sitting around like, all right, what do I do next?
Well, it's interesting that you touched on the fact that you almost feel like you're still discovering this next purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and how you identify with how other people might be feeling in this time of change for
Mm-hmm.
some people. And I sometimes think that we tap into that a little more when we've gone through a traumatic experience. And I want to just walk people through what happened that night. It was in October of 2018. You were shot in the line of duty by a gunman who later shot himself. You were shot 3 times in the right forearm, upper left arm, and the left side of your back, which was caught by your vest.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say traumatic event, I mean, this is unlike anything most of us can even imagine. So walk me through those moments after you were shot. Did you believe that you were going to die?
So when you have somebody running behind you, not knowing what's happening behind you, definitely, like, you kind of get into this, I have to leave. You know, I tell people a lot of times, you know, I've done presentations about my critical incident, and I tell people my mind and my brain were doing 2 different things. So my brain was in survival mode. It was like, go, 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 go. And my mind is like, I was just trying to get something to eat right before this call. Like, how did we end up here? But I'm trying to get them both on the same page. And so it was very surreal. I mean, of course, right after, and then a few months afterwards. But, you know, when I'm trying to get everything together, and I'm looking down at my arm, because I see this, I have 2 holes in my arm because it was a through and through in my right arm. And I'm like, this doesn't look right. And it hurts really bad. But at the same time, you have to keep moving, because you're not finished. Like, if it's a game, the game has not ended yet. And so one of the first things I said when the first officer got to me, because I was in such a confused state, like, I didn't even know where my partner was, because she got shot as well. And everything happened so quickly. And I just remember looking at the first officer that got to me, just like remembering how fast and slow everything happened at the same time. Like, I see the gun coming out, and I'm like, my brain is like, focus, 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 focus. But it's like, I got to get out of here. And I remember telling the first officer, like, he took out a gun and shot at me. And then the next thing I said was, my mom's going to freak out. This is great. My mom's going to freak out, because I just got off the phone with her. And then I bring up my mom later, and I'm like, she's going to make me quit my job. That's what this is coming down to. And
all that's going through your mind at that
all at the same time. It's just like boom, 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 boom. They put me in a car. They take me down the street so fire can come meet me and my partner. And I just remember getting panicked all of a sudden, because I didn't see her, and I wanted to know where she was, and I didn't feel comfortable leaving until I put eyes on her. And I was in a lot of pain, but I was like, nope, we have to wait. Once she came into the parking lot, me and her locked eyes, and I was like, okay, cool.
And in that moment, did you feel like, okay, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to survive this?
Yes, I felt, I mean, once the first officer got to me, like, I'm like, okay, things are good. There's more people here. There's more people coming. But yeah, there was more of a sense of relief once we were down the street, and you know, at a distance, a much safer area. You can hear sirens. You can see officers running around. So it did feel more safe. And obviously, once we were in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, you know, things started to really set in. But then I'm thinking, like, I got to call my family. and that's just one of those things as the phone is ringing, it's like, I've never rehearsed this. Like, how do I have this conversation with my family? So.
And you've got all of these thoughts going on at once. And sometimes I think because there are so many things, so many things going through your mind, the actual trauma of what happened doesn't necessarily set in until after. And people deal with it differently.
Sure.
So my question is, how has the trauma of what happened to you, because I know you said that you went to and received therapy, how has it affected you emotionally and physically, and what is your advice to others who have survived traumatic events?
So it's weird because I'm used to dealing with people. I'm used to being the helper. I'm not used to being helped. So that's been a big change for me. And I've never dealt with anxiety before, at least not to this magnitude. And so the anxiety part is what gets me, because I'm a pretty controlled person. And I'm like, okay, we're going to plan it out. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But now, it's almost like there's a little voice that's constantly asking you questions like, are you sure? Is that going to be okay? Do we really want to do this? Which I've never really had that before. And so the anxiety is a big part for me, and just kind of learning what my triggers were when it came to my anxiety. Like, I didn't like dark rooms for a long time. And I realized that was because the house was very dark. Even though the shooting happened around 3:00 in the afternoon, all the curtains were closed. And it took me a couple of weeks before I figured out why I would freak out anytime I was in a dark room. So, Arizona, a lot of us have the blackout curtains. So every morning I'd be walking through the house, just like snatching open curtains and telling my kids, open the curtains now. And I startle easily. Of course, my son gets a big kick out of that because he loves to jump out and scare you. So we have to explain to him, hey, we can't just jump out and scare mommy because it really scares her. And so just learning those types of things and learning how to cope with them properly. I'm not going to sit here and lie and act like I've coped with my trauma the best way I should. But I try to be open with people. I try to let my husband know when my anxiety is like through the roof, when I need a break. I talk to my therapist. I have friends that I talk to. I'm still in contact with peer support from the police department. I'm myself a member of peer support as well. And it does really help me to be able to have conversations with people that are going through things so that I can reassure them everything you're feeling, you may feel it's completely out of this world, but it's normal after a traumatic incident. I think one of the biggest things that helped me, which I try to speak on a lot, is I was getting help before my critical incident happened. So a lot of times as a first responder, when you have peer support or something bad happens, you think you're just dealing with the critical incident.
Right.
But people had stuff going on in their lives prior to the critical incident. So a lot of times you find out you're dealing with issues at home. You're dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD. Sometimes you're dealing with addiction issues, child custody, all these things. And then this critical incident happens. So I like letting people know that I was seeing a therapist before my critical incident just to maintain my crazy, I call it. I just being a working parent, and I had 2 young kids, and me and my husband worked opposite shifts. So that can be a little stressful too. And just trying to make sure you're doing everything right, especially as a parent. And I think moms, we're really bad. We beat ourselves up a lot. And it's like, your kids are fine. You're doing what you're supposed to do. And so it just kind of, I like letting people know that. So it's like, hey, everything that's happening is normal. I think we do have to seek help before it gets that bad, and you have to, especially the law enforcement officer or even a firefighter or paramedic, you can't sustain those mini traumas for, let's say, a 20 or 25 year career and walk away okay.
Right.
And if you are, like, I need to know the secret, but if you're experiencing a traumatic incident and you don't your behaviors don't change afterwards and you're not having some of these little anxiety things and some of the things that come along with trauma, I would worry about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we as women, as moms, we tend to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're either doing too much or we're not doing enough. And I think that's just a constant battle. But
Yes.
you touched on the fact that, you know, if you're a police officer for a certain amount of time, I mean, there is just so much on top of the everyday struggles and challenges that you're dealing with. And you mentioned something in your final call where you were talking to your colleagues and telling them to take care of each other and make sure that they check in on each other. And it got me thinking about what this summer has been like across the country and in fact across the world. How difficult was it for you as a Black woman, as a police officer, you know, watching the recent events unfold from home while you're on medical leave and you're not on the streets, in the department, in your uniform?
That was a tough one for me. And that's something I talk to my family about a lot and my therapist, just because I wanted to be out there with everybody, even though people kept telling me like, oh my God, you know, I'm so glad you're not out there. You know, this is what officers are dealing with. But, you know, I'm kind of like the movie Backdraft, like, you know, you go, we go kind of thing. So I want to be out there with you, standing at your side and going through everything you're going through. But I wasn't able to do that. So that was a little difficult for me at times, but I would help in other ways by kind of letting officers, I mean, not just at my department, but other departments, just kind of offload some of what they were feeling and what they were going through on me, because I was stationary. So it was nice because I was inside, so people knew where to find me. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, that was my way of helping, or my way of contributing to not just my department, but to what was and currently is still going on in the world of policing today.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine that would have been extremely difficult for you to be at home on medical leave, knowing, you know, that you wanted to be there with your colleagues for support. Mm-hmm. And when I talk about support, you know, I go back to the fact that when we first met, it was at a No Women's Summit, and I was introducing you, and we were talking about women working in male-dominated fields. And we touched on the fact that, you know, one of the things that you're proudest of, well, let me first mention, you are a postpartum doula and breastfeeding advocate for working moms. And you've said that one of your proudest career achievements was implementing a department-wide lactation policy, which is so tremendous. And, you know, I have to ask, I mean, were there any challenges along the way in making that happen for other working women within the department?
In the beginning, there were, but like I tell people, you know, my mom always taught me, you got to ask and keep asking and ask the right people. So luckily, I had a conversation with Tempe's chief at the time, Sylvia Moyer, about just me coming back to work and how things were going. And so I just kind of had a conversation with her because things were a little chaotic. They weren't as streamlined as they had been before when I had my son just 3 years prior. And, you know, I kind of started thinking to myself, because I'm pretty vocal, and if I want something, you'll know. And just ask my husband and my mom. And but it was a thing of, I'm thinking like, wow, like I'm a pretty vocal person, but a newer officer or an officer who doesn't have my same level of confidence may not feel like they can ask, or who to ask, or how to ask. And so, you know, like my mom used to tell me all the time, the worst thing somebody can tell you is no. Yep. And then you figure out a different way. And so luckily I was not told no. The chief was very receptive. She helped get a committee together and we got to have open dialogue. It was me and a professional employee, professional staff. And we got to talk about our experiences after coming back and having kids and things that we needed to do better. And one of the things I mentioned was the fact that I've been with Tempe since 2009. I remember having to, you know, if I was working south, having to go north and help with searches of females because we didn't have as many females on the road. I would do that sometimes all shift, or going down to the jail or helping the sheriff's department or anything like that. So Now, at the time when this all was going on with the committee, I was on a squad of 6, 3 were female. So I said, that's changed. Like, we're bumping into each other in the locker room. And I said, I'm going to be honest, it doesn't make me feel valued as an employee that I'm just asking for a little bit of time and a little bit of space, that I have to fight for this. And we have babies at the police department, and so we don't have policies in place that help the employees that we have, or even people who might be interested, or women who might be interested in the department, or just even to retain you. Because most working moms have gotten to that point of thinking like, what do I choose, my job or my family? Now, whether you actually walk away from your job or not, but it's crossed most working moms' mind at some point. And so I knew my family was going to come first. And so I was very grateful to everybody that was on the committee and people who were advocates for us. And we found advocates in the most unlikely people around the department. I mean, one of our biggest advocates was a 20-year veteran of the department who has grown children who work at the department.
Really?
And he was fantastic. And they built out a couple of rooms, quiet rooms, as I like to call it, because it's not just for lactating moms, it's for everybody. If you need to take a break after a tough call, if you're doing, some hormone therapy or any other sort of medical thing you may have, or if you just want to go in there on your lunch break and kind of breathe it out before you get back out there and reset. So it was very nice. And I've actually had 2 women who recently returned back to work who separately thanked me for them being able to have that room, because it was one less thing they had to worry about at work.
Mm-hmm. Which takes me back to that final call and why I think it was emotional for me to watch, having known what you had done in the police department with regard to breastfeeding moms. Hearing your colleagues talk about what a difference you made for the department while you were there. And so moving forward now, I know you are still thinking about, that what next answer to that question. We have talked in the past, though, where you said that, you do motivational speaking and that you would really like to take that to a whole other level. Mm-hmm. So is there something in particular that you really want to focus on with your motivational speaking? Maybe certain groups, what or parts of your story that you're hoping to share?
Well, I think it's my main message would be, obviously talking about life after a critical incident and just how the ups and downs of my recovery are still going, because I'm not at the end yet. And just like a message of like taking care of each other and taking care of us and you and everything that goes along with it, and really being in tune on what's going on with you and getting the appropriate help and not being ashamed of it. I think when we hear other people have gone through certain things, I like sharing my story about the shooting. People are always worried about, oh, I don't want to ask you. And I'm like, no, ask, because it helps me process. I remember things that I didn't remember before. And same when I talk to women about having kids. I've dealt with postpartum depression twice. And the second time was worse than the first time, but I like sharing that story because it gives people a sense of normalcy. Even when I talk to, my male friends or male coworkers about postpartum and things to look out for in their own families, it's been a help. And it, like I said, it makes you feel normal. It's like, okay, this isn't like something that only happens to a small amount of people. And there's a lot of changes that happen after you have a kid, hormonally, emotionally, physically, like all these things that happen. And the same when you go through a critical incident, as a first responder. Just to kind of take it back a question, because I didn't fully answer one of the questions when you were talking about, as far as being a woman and being a Black woman in law enforcement. I think one of the biggest things that has helped me is talking to people.
Yes.
Because I don't think we talk, and just like we're sharing stories right now. And when I said about sharing my story about my trauma and, my postpartum depression issues, just having that open dialogue and people being comfortable enough to have that conversation, because obviously I have a foot in both worlds as a Black woman and as a law enforcement officer. But I do have to remind people, and I'm still in this line from a good friend of mine, you know, I was Black before I was blue, you know? And so I think we can bring a lot of good into the world of law enforcement if we are being open about our experiences and who we are. But at the same time, and something I said at my retirement ceremony is, you know, we have to check in on each other, like I said, and it's nothing to send a text. If you pop in my head, I should send you a text, give you a quick call. If I walk past you in the hallway, I shouldn't ask you how you're doing over my shoulder. I should face you, say your name, and wait after I say, hey, Catherine, how are you doing today? Pause. And I tell people, you may hear, I'm doing great today, or you may be there for a minute, which has happened to me. And I said, because especially in law enforcement, because that's the industry I can speak from, but if we don't take the time to pull people aside when we know they're not acting the way we're used to them acting, I don't have to hang out with you outside of work in order to be like, Catherine, that's
different.
Yeah, that's not her. Or if I don't want to say anything to you directly, I can always go to your supervisor. And I, you know, something I said, and I almost didn't say it, but I was like, nope, I have to, because it's how I feel. I said, when we see people on the news, when we didn't take the time to pull them aside and when we didn't say anything to their supervisor, we're just as responsible. You know, and I know people that hurts to hear that, and people don't want to believe that, but we have to have better accountability within our own work groups. And you have to call people out and say, you can't come out here with me today because you're not going to get me in trouble. You're not going to get me hurt or someone else hurt. You need to go take a time out and come back when you are ready to be here. You know, I find it funny that, and I love law enforcement. I love helping people. And I've been guilty of this over the years. It's very easy to show up on a call and tell everybody what they're doing wrong, instead of looking at yourself and saying,
you can relate that to so many different aspects of our lives.
Yeah, you know, and so, and I mean, that's one of the reasons why I was getting help before my critical incidents, because I started feeling like a hypocrite. You know, I'm on calls telling people what they need to be doing, how they need to be taking care of themselves. And these are services that you can utilize. But I wasn't doing those things for myself. And I didn't feel good as I went along. And so once I started getting that appropriate help, you know, things kind of turned around. Now, a few months later, I did get shot, but I think it helped me to be in a better place with it mentally, because I was already holding myself accountable and getting the proper help.
Well, and things might have turned out differently for you emotionally had you not already started that work, right?
No, 100%. And, I feel terrible sometimes because I have nights where my anxiety is crazy, and, you know, you got little kids and they just want to focus on you. And my anxiety is too much, and I might yell a little too much. So I'm like, you know what, we need space. And then, you know, start beating yourself up as a mom, you know, and I know we've all had those experiences, but, you know, other than that, everything's been good. Everything's good.
You know what? None of us is perfect. And I think the more that we share our stories, the more we realize just how much we have in common. And, you know, it helps us to inspire and empower each other, and really makes a difference when we share, which is why I love doing this podcast, because it's an opportunity to kind of go in depth a little bit more on, you know, what we're experiencing in our respective lives. So one last question.
Okay. I'm
just curious, you know, what do you know now that you wish you would have known way back when you were just starting out?
Whew. Not to take everything so personal. That's been one of the, that's a hard one, you know, not to take everything so personal. And, you know, when I was younger, I took everything personal as a young police officer, you know, and then it took time, because when you show up on a scene, people aren't mad at you personally. They weren't mad at Lindsay. They're mad at the situation. They're mad at the person who's no longer on scene. It's easy to yell at a uniform. And I would have to kind of take a deep breath, let people vent and say, okay, all right, I get it. I get it, and then move on from there. So that's one of the biggest things. And that's something I try to talk to some of the rookies about and other officers that I'm like, hey, don't take it personal. You're here for 10 or 12 hours. You're getting paid to be here. Some of it comes with the territory. And, they don't know me. They have no idea who I am. And I always liked the calls where at the end of the call, somebody was way up here and I stayed calm and they came down here and they're like, I'm really sorry. And you're not what I thought you were going to be. And I'm like, well, thank you. And same goes for you,
That is a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is a beautiful thing. Lindsay, you're awesome. I love talking with you because I always learn something new about you, about myself, about the world in general. So thank you. I think that you have a tremendous career ahead of you as a motivational speaker because you just have so much to offer. So I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. And I thank you for your service. I'm so excited to see what that next chapter looks like for you.
Well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And I always tell people I'm an open book. I love it when people call me and they want to run things by me because it is about perspective. It is about perspective.
It certainly is. Lindsay, thank you. By the way, you can learn more about Lindsay McCall Long by going to our website, which is thewomenseye.com. Also, we want to let you know that The Women's Eye has a book. It is called 20 Women Change Makers. You can shop for it wherever you buy books and at changemakersbook.com. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Women's Eye podcast. I thank you so much for joining me. I'm Catherine Anaya. Until next time, remember, it's the world as we see it.